The little dragon sat alone on the edge of the cliff, high above the glowing city. Her scales shimmered in shades of blue and silver, catching the sunlight like tiny stars. She was small, no bigger than a child, but everyone in the city feared her. The humans and aliens who lived there told stories about her sharp claws, her fire that could burn anything, and her eyes that seemed to see into a person's soul. But the little dragon had never hurt anyone. She had never even tried. She only wanted something she had never had: friends. Every day she watched the children play from afar. She saw them laughing, running, and chasing floating toys that glowed in the evening light. She wanted to join, but she could not. Whenever she came near, they would run and scream. Even the adults avoided her. They whispered warnings about how dangerous she could be. The little dragon curled her tail around herself and let out a small puff of smoke, soft and harmless. She watched the city below, wishing she could be part of it. Her loneliness felt heavy, like a stone pressing on her heart. Sometimes, when the wind blew across the cliffs, she imagined flying down and playing with the children. She imagined them laughing with her, not at her, and calling her by name. But every time, fear held her back. She remembered the first time someone had thrown a rock at her. She had only been trying to reach a high branch to watch the children play from above. The rock had bounced off her scales, but it had scared her so much that she had flown far away and hidden in the cliffs for days. After that, she learned to keep her distance. The world was full of people who did not understand her, and she did not want to be hurt again. The little dragon often thought about what it would be like to have just one friend. Someone who would not run or scream. Someone who would laugh with her, not at her. She imagined a small human child, smiling and holding out a hand. She imagined that hand reaching toward her, not in fear but in trust. That was the kind of connection she longed for, though she had never found it. Even as she watched the sunset paint the sky in pink and orange, her heart felt heavy. She let out another soft puff of smoke that curled into the air like a tiny cloud. No one came. No one ever did. She sighed and tucked her wings close to her body. The city seemed so close, yet so far away. Every light in the windows reminded her of the life she could not touch. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, she would imagine that the children could see her feelings. That they could see the loneliness behind her sparkling eyes. Maybe then they would understand that she was not dangerous. Maybe then they would come to play. But those were only dreams, and dreams could not cross the distance between fear and trust. Night came, and the stars began to shine in the darkening sky. The little dragon watched them, feeling a small spark of hope. Somewhere out there, someone might see her differently. Someone might not be afraid. Maybe, just maybe, there was a friend waiting for her, though she did not know who it could be. She curled up on the cliff, folding her wings around herself like a blanket. The wind whispered through the rocks, and for a moment, it felt as if the world was listening to her. She closed her eyes and let herself imagine playing, laughing, and running alongside a small human child. Her heart ached with loneliness, but also with a quiet hope that one day, everything could change. She did not know when it would happen or who would come to her, but she held on to that hope tightly. For now she would stay on the cliffs, watching the city from above. She would watch the children play even if she could not join them. And she would wait, quietly, for the day when someone might see her not as a fearsome creature, but as a friend. The little dragon's scales shimmered under the moonlight as she settled down to sleep. She dreamed of laughter, of games, and of a hand reaching out to hers. And deep inside, beneath the loneliness and the fear, a small flame of hope flickered, bright and steady, waiting for the moment it could grow. The next morning, the little dragon woke to the soft hum of the city below. The lights were still dim, and the air was filled with the faint smell of flowers from the hanging gardens. She stretched her wings and looked toward the cliffs across the valley. She had spent countless days watching, but today something felt different. On one of the lower cliffs, a small human child appeared. The child was no older than 8, with bright eyes that sparkled like sunlight on water. He carried a little satchel on his back, filled with strange tools and glowing orbs that floated around him. Unlike the others, he did not look afraid. Instead, he looked curious. The little dragon froze. No one had ever come this close before. Usually, humans screamed and ran, or they threw stones to scare her away. But this child simply stood there looking at her. He tilted his head and smiled. It was a small, gentle smile, full of warmth. The little dragon's heart skipped a beat. The child waved one hand and said softly, "Hello, are you watching the city too?" The little dragon flinched. He had spoken to her. For the first time, someone had spoken to her without fear. She wanted to answer, but she did not know how. All she could do was tilt her head and puff a tiny cloud of smoke. The child laughed lightly, not at her, but at the funny little cloud that danced in the air. "You're beautiful," he said. "I've never seen anyone like you. Do you want to play?" The little dragon's eyes widened. Play? She had never played with anyone. All her games had been in her mind, pretending she was part of the children she had watched for so long. Could this small human really want to play with her? She wanted to believe it, but fear held her back. The child noticed her hesitation. He sat down on the cliff carefully, far enough not to scare her. He pulled a glowing orb from his satchel and rolled it gently toward her. It floated in the air between them, spinning slowly. "See? You can touch it. It won't hurt you." The little dragon's tail twitched. She watched the orb, her curiosity growing. Slowly she reached a claw forward and touched it. The orb wobbled and glowed brighter, then floated back toward the child. He clapped his hands in delight. "Good job. You did it." The little dragon felt a strange happiness bloom inside her chest. No one had ever praised her. No one had ever celebrated her. She puffed another cloud of colorful smoke, this time bigger, swirling like a tiny rainbow. The child laughed again, clapping his hands. "I like your colors. They're amazing." Encouraged, the little dragon inched closer. The orb floated in front of her, and she batted it gently with her paw. It spun, sparkled, and returned to the child. They continued this way for a while, rolling the glowing orbs back and forth. Each movement, each laugh, made her heart lighter. She realized something she had never thought before. She could have fun. She could have a friend. The loneliness that had pressed on her for so long began to lift, replaced by excitement. The child laughed so freely, and it was not scary. It was kind. It was real. The little dragon started to flap her wings lightly, spinning in the air above him. The child watched in awe, clapping and pointing. "Wow. You're amazing. Can you show me more?" She circled higher and then dove toward him, but carefully, not too close. She wanted to make him happy, to show him her world without scaring him. He cheered with joy, reaching out toward her as if he trusted her completely. She had never known anyone could trust her like that. Hours passed like minutes. They explored the cliffs together, flying and playing games. Sometimes the little dragon would hide behind rocks, peeking at him, and he would pretend not to see her, then jump out and make her laugh with a small, playful shout. It was a dance of trust and joy, simple and pure. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. The little dragon landed gently on the cliff beside the child. They were tired but happy. She curled her tail around herself, and he sat close, not too near but close enough to feel like they were together. "Thank you for playing with me," the child said softly. "I've been hoping to find a friend like you." The little dragon tilted her head, watching him. No one had ever said anything like that to her. She puffed a small rainbow-colored smoke heart in the air, her way of saying the same. For the first time she understood that friendship was not something she had to dream about. It could happen. And it had happened today because a small human child had the courage to ask a simple question. She watched the stars appear in the sky, her heart full. Maybe, she thought, just maybe, things could be different from now on. Maybe she did not have to be alone anymore. And somewhere deep inside, a tiny flame of hope burned brighter than ever before, guiding her toward a world where she could belong. The next morning, the little dragon woke on the cliff with excitement in her heart. She had never felt this way before. Yesterday had been different. Someone had finally reached out to her, someone who wanted to play, someone who had not been afraid. She looked down at the valley where the city stretched in soft light. The children were beginning their daily routines, and she knew that from their homes, no one would dare come near her. But that did not matter. She was waiting for the small human child. Soon she saw him climbing the rocks, carrying his little satchel with glowing orbs. His hair shone in the sunlight, and his bright eyes were full of curiosity. As he reached the cliff, he stopped and smiled at her. "Good morning," he called softly. The little dragon tilted her head and puffed a small cloud of smoke in reply. She had learned that she could communicate with him in her own way without words. She flapped her wings and hovered a few feet above the ground, careful not to scare him. The child watched her closely, then pulled a small orb from his satchel. "Do you want to try something new today?" he asked. His voice was gentle, full of hope. "I have an idea." The little dragon's tail twitched with curiosity. She had played yesterday, but today felt different. She felt a flutter of something strange inside her chest, excitement mixed with a little fear. Could she trust him again? Could this be real? The child placed the orb on the ground. It floated gently, spinning in the air, glowing softly. "It's a game," he said. "I call it the orb dance. You have to touch it, make it move, and then I will try to catch it." We will see who can move it the longest. The little dragon stared at the orb. She had never played a game like this. Usually, games ended badly, humans screamed, they ran, they threw stones. But this time felt different. The child was smiling, waiting patiently, full of trust and kindness. She stepped forward slowly, one claw touching the glowing orb. It floated higher and spun faster, but it did not hurt her. She batted it with her other paw, sending it back toward the child. He clapped his hands in delight. Yes, you did it. The little dragon let out a small, happy puff of smoke. She could not remember ever feeling this joy before. Her scales shimmered in the sunlight as she hovered above him, spinning in delight. The child laughed, and his laughter was like music to her ears. It was warm, inviting, and safe. Then the child sat down and looked at her with wide, earnest eyes. I have to ask you something, he said softly. His voice was calm, gentle, and full of hope. Do you like to play? The little dragon froze. Her eyes widened, and her wings fluttered nervously. No one had ever asked her that. No one had ever cared about what she wanted. Her heart raced. She wanted to answer, but she had never spoken to a human before. Could she really tell him yes? She lowered herself carefully and let out a small swirl of colorful smoke. It twisted and turned in the air, forming little shapes, circles, stars, and finally a small heart. That was her answer. Yes, she wanted to play. She wanted to trust him. She wanted to be his friend. The child's face lit up with joy. You do, he shouted happily. I knew you would. Let's play together, okay? And so they began. The little dragon learned how to roll the orb with her paws, how to make it float higher, how to bounce it off rocks safely. The child laughed whenever the orb spun in the air, and she puffed clouds of colorful smoke in response, each one brighter than the last. They chased each other around the cliffs, taking turns leaping, flapping, and twirling in the air. The city below was silent. No one came near, but the little dragon did not care. She had finally found someone who understood her. Someone who wanted to be with her, not afraid of her, not trying to control her. Hours passed like minutes. The sun moved across the sky, and the colors of the valley shifted from gold to soft orange. The little dragon rested on a large rock, her chest rising and falling as she caught her breath. The child sat beside her, still smiling. Thank you for playing with me, he said. You make everything more fun. The little dragon tilted her head and puffed a small spiral of smoke. She wanted to say thank you too, but she knew he already understood. He had asked the right question. That one simple question had changed everything. For the first time in her life she felt truly seen. She felt hope, joy, and trust all at once. The loneliness that had pressed on her for so long was gone, replaced by a warm feeling that spread through her chest. She could belong somewhere. She could have a friend. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in pink and purple, the little dragon and the child sat side by side on the cliff. They watched the city lights twinkle below, the same city that had once feared her. But now it did not matter. She had found someone who believed in her, someone who saw her not as a threat but as a friend. And deep inside she knew that her life had changed forever. One simple question had unlocked a new world for her, full of laughter, trust, and the promise of friendship. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of this new connection sink in. For the first time the little dragon felt something she had never felt before. Hope. Real hope. And it was brighter than any star in the sky. The little dragon woke the next morning feeling lighter than she had ever felt. The memory of yesterday stayed in her mind, the laughter, the glowing orbs, and the simple question that had changed everything. She stretched her wings and looked toward the city below. She knew the human child would come again. He always did. True to her hope, the child appeared on the cliff, climbing carefully with his satchel full of glowing orbs. He waved at her, smiling. Good morning, friend, he called. The little dragon puffed a swirl of smoke in greeting and flapped her wings happily. Today felt special. She wanted to show him her world. The child noticed how the dragon's scales shimmered more brightly in the sunlight. You're shining today, he said. Are you happy? The little dragon tilted her head and puffed a small rainbow-colored cloud. Yes, she was happy. She had a friend. That simple truth made her chest feel full and warm. They played together all morning. The little dragon learned new games with the orbs. She could send them spinning higher, make them float in loops, and bounce them off the cliff so they glimmered in the sunlight. The child laughed and clapped, and she responded with colorful smoke that formed shapes like stars, hearts, and flowers. As they played, something remarkable happened. A few curious children from the city began to appear at the edges of the cliffs. They watched from a safe distance, whispering to each other. They had heard rumors about the fearsome dragon, but now they saw something different. She was not terrifying. She was playing. She was laughing. The little dragon froze for a moment, unsure what to do. Would they scream? Would they run? She remembered all the time she had been alone, all the years of being feared. The human child noticed her hesitation. "It's okay," he said softly. "They just want to watch. Maybe someday they will play too." Encouraged by his calm voice, the little dragon returned to her games. Slowly the other children crept closer, still cautious, still curious. One little girl reached out a hand, then pulled it back. Another boy clutched a glowing orb in his hand, unsure if he should join. The child smiled at them. "You can play too. She won't hurt you. She just wants to have fun." The little dragon puffed a small spiral of smoke, and it drifted toward the new children. The smoke was soft and colorful, gentle enough for anyone to touch. The children giggled as they reached out, touching the clouds and watching them twirl in the sunlight. Soon, the first few children began to roll the glowing orbs toward the little dragon. She batted them back lightly, careful not to scare them. Each laugh, each gentle movement, made her heart swell. For the first time she felt not just friendship but acceptance. The child who had first reached out to her watched with pride. "See? They can play with you. They just needed to understand you." Hours passed like minutes. The little dragon taught the children new games. She showed them how to make the orbs spin higher, how to catch them safely, and how to create little clouds of smoke that danced and sparkled. Laughter echoed across the cliffs, a sound that had never filled this place before. Even some adults came closer, curious but cautious. They watched as their children played with the dragon. Slowly they realized she was not a threat. She was kind. She was joyful. She was a friend. By evening, the cliffs were filled with children playing, laughing, and learning from the little dragon. She hovered above them, flapping her wings, sending colorful smoke into the sky. The city below could see the smoke, and some adults began to point and smile. The fearful stories were fading. The little dragon landed next to the first human child. He sat down beside her, catching his breath from all the running and laughing. "You did it," he said softly. "You showed them who you really are." The little dragon puffed a small rainbow heart of smoke. Yes, she had shown them. She had shown the city that she was not something to fear. She was a friend. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the little dragon and the children sat together on the cliffs. The city below began to shine with lights, but it no longer felt far away. The distance between her and the humans was closing. Step by step, heart by heart, trust was building. The little dragon realized that friendship could grow slowly, like a tiny flame turning into a steady light. One person had reached out to her first, the human child, but now many more hearts were opening. That night, as she curled up to sleep, she looked at the stars and felt a warm glow inside. She was no longer alone. She had friends. She had hope. And she had a world that was beginning to understand her. The little dragon's scales shimmered softly under the moonlight. She drifted to sleep, dreaming of games, laughter, and the bright future ahead. A single act of kindness had begun a chain that could change everything. And in her heart, she knew that tomorrow would be even better. The next morning, the little dragon woke feeling lighter than ever. She stretched her wings and looked across the cliffs. The sun painted the valley in gold and pink, and the city below sparkled like a sea of tiny lights. She could hear laughter already. The children had arrived, and with them, the human child who had changed her life. She hovered above the cliffs, her scales catching the sunlight in shimmering blues and silvers. The human child waved at her, smiling brightly. "Good morning, friend," he called. The little dragon puffed a soft cloud of rainbow-colored smoke and dipped toward him. Today felt special. Something was different. She could feel it in the way the city seemed quieter, as if it were waiting to see what would happen. The child ran up to her, holding a glowing orb. "Let's show everyone how much fun we can have," he said. He tossed the orb gently toward her, and she batted it back with her paw. The orb spun and glowed in the sunlight, catching the attention of the other children who had been playing on the cliffs. One by one, more children joined. They carried their own glowing orbs, curious and brave. The little dragon showed them how to roll, toss, and catch the orbs safely. She created colorful smoke shapes in the air, flowers, stars, hearts, that made the children laugh and clap. As they played, some adults appeared at the edges of the cliffs. They had heard the stories of the fearsome dragon, but now they saw something new. The dragon was not frightening. She was gentle, kind, and joyful. The adults whispered to each other, amazed at what they saw. The little dragon watched as the city began to change. Where there had been fear, there was now curiosity. Where there had been distance there was now connection. She flapped her wings higher, sending a swirl of rainbow smoke into the sky. The smoke drifted over the city, a signal that she was no longer alone. The human child laughed and clapped. Look, they can see you. They can see how wonderful you are. The little dragon felt her heart swell. She had never imagined this could happen. For years she had watched the city from afar, lonely and afraid. Now she was part of it. She had friends. She had trust. She had a place where she belonged. Throughout the day the children continued to play with her. They learned her games, created new ones, and even taught her some of theirs. The little dragon followed them through the cliffs, sending colorful smoke trails into the sky that sparkled like fireworks. She laughed in her own way, a soft sound of joy that had never been heard before in the valley. The adults, seeing their children safe and happy, began to approach. They asked the dragon questions softly, watched her with wonder, and realized that she had never been a threat. She had only wanted friendship. Slowly, step by step, the walls of fear that had surrounded her began to crumble. By evening the cliffs were filled with humans and dragons, children and adults, all playing together. The little dragon hovered above them, sending soft clouds of colorful smoke into the sky. Her scales glittered like jewels and her heart was full. She had never imagined she could feel this happy. The human child sat beside her, holding a glowing orb and smiling. "You did it," he said softly. "You showed them who you really are. Now everyone can see." The little dragon puffed a spiral of rainbow smoke in reply. She did not need words. He understood. She had changed the world not through fear or power, but through trust and friendship. The sun began to set, painting the sky with oranges, pinks, and purples. The little dragon and the children gathered on the cliffs, looking out at the city below. It was no longer a place that feared her. It was a place that could understand her. The little dragon curled her tail around herself and let the gentle wind wash over her. For the first time in her life she felt completely safe. She felt loved. She felt at home. And in that quiet moment she realized something wonderful. One simple question had started all of this. One human child had asked, "Do you like to play?" And it had changed everything. The city below, the cliffs around her, the laughter of children, it all felt connected now. The little dragon had bridged the gap between fear and understanding. She had turned loneliness into friendship, and she knew that the world would never be the same again. The little dragon looked at the stars appearing in the darkening sky and puffed one last cloud of rainbow-colored smoke. It rose high above the cliffs, a symbol of hope, joy, and harmony. The world had learned to see her for who she really was, not a threat, not a monster, but a friend. And as she drifted to sleep that night, nestled beside the child who had first reached out to her, the little dragon dreamed of tomorrow. She dreamed of more games, more laughter, and more friendship. She dreamed of a world where dragons and humans could live together in peace and joy. For the first time, the little dragon knew that she was truly part of something bigger, a world full of hope, connection, and love. And that was a gift she would treasure forever.